All right, folks, I accidentally exited out of the last presentation, so it's going to be really short, but here is the explanation of the social bond theory.
Created by Travis Hirschi in 1969. There are four elements in the social bond theory. Number one, attachment. This is described as a level of values and or norms that an individual holds in society. Strong bonds created with parents, teachers, and pro-social pairs decreases delinquency. However, lack of bond with parents, teachers, and pro-social pairs increases the likelihood of criminal behavior. Number two, commitment. This is described as the importance of social relationships that people value. It is also the level of obligation that an individual has to abide by legal behavior. Individuals with lack of commitment to conventional activities are more likely to engage in criminal behavior. Number three, involvement. This is described as a person's choice to get involved in conventional versus deviant behavior based on the way they spend their time. However, involvement in unconventional behavior exposes an individual to criminal behavior. Number four, beliefs. This is described as the degree to which an individual follows the values associated with behavior that conforms to the law. However, antisocial attitudes and behaviors encourages criminal activities. The lack of attachment to significant others, commitment and involvement in conventional activities, and the lack of belief in the moral code of society increases the likelihood of criminal behavior.
Let me just make sure that that doesn't play. So, Scram and Tibbetts dedicate a full section to each of these four elements that I'm not going to elaborate on as the video did. Now, um, Hershey's theory, again, the social bond theory, has been tested by numerous researchers and has, for the most part, been supported. Although one criticism is that the components of the social bond may predict criminality only if they are defined in a certain way. So, for example, with respect to the element of involvement, um, studies have shown that not all conventional activities are equal when it comes to preventing delinquency. So only academic or religious activities seem to have consistent effects on inhibiting delinquency. On the other hand, some studies have shown that teenagers who date or play sports actually may have an increased risk in committing crime. So another major concern of this theory is that the effects of attachments on crime depend on who the person is attached to. As previously indicated in this presentation, some studies have consistently shown that attachment to delinquent peers is a strong predictor of criminal activity. So, despite the criticism that this theory has received, Hersey's social bonding theory is still one of the most accepted theories of criminal behavior. It is a relatively convincing explanation for criminality because of the consistent support that it's found among samples of people that have been taken from all across the globe. So it's it's worth reading upon the integrated social control theories. These two integrated models um, are models that mostly incorporate the control perspective into their frameworks. These two integrated models are control balance theory and power control theory. Um, they both receive considerable attention within the field of criminology, but I'm not going to focus on these two. So again, the control balance theory and the power control theory. You can pause it um, in these slides to read over the main points. But now I'm going to focus on the last important theory, and that is a general theory of crime, also known as low self-control. So in 1990, Gofferdson and Hershey proposed a general theory of low self-control, which, like I said earlier, is often referred to as the general theory of crime. So like the previous control theories of crime, this theory assumes that individuals are born predisposed towards selfish, self-centered activities, and that only effective child rearing and socialization can create self-control among persons. So as you're going to see in the figure in the next slide, without such adequate socialization and reduction of criminal opportunities, individuals will follow their natural tendencies to become selfish predators. So the theory assumes that self-control must be established by age 10. If it hasn't been formed by that time, according to the theory, individuals will forever exhibit low self-control. And here is that model that I previously referred to. So the distinguishing characteristics of this theory is its emphasis on individuals' ability to control themselves, meaning that this theory of crime assumes that people can take a degree of control over their own decisions and within certain limitations, quote unquote, control themselves. Now, there are psychological aspects of low self-control, and recently researchers have claimed that low self-control may be due to emotional disposition of individuals. So for example, there's one particular study that showed the effects of low self-control on intentions to commit drunk driving and shoplifting, that they were tied to individuals' perceptions of pleasure and shame. More specifically, the findings of this study showed that individuals who had low self-control had significantly lower levels of anticipated shame, but significantly higher levels of perceived pleasure in committing both drunk driving and shoplifting. So these results suggest that individuals who lack self-control will be oriented toward gaining pleasure and taking advantage of resources, but also toward avoiding negative emotional feelings like shame that are primarily induced through socialization. Now, there's also a physiological aspect to low self-control. So low self-control can also be tied to these factors because research has shown that chronic offenders show greater arousal toward danger and risk taking than toward the possibility of punishment. So this arousal has been measured by monitoring brain activity in response to certain stimuli. The research suggests that individuals are encouraged to commit risky behavior due to physiological mechanisms that reward their risk-taking activities by releasing pleasure chemicals in the brain. So in a similar light, recent studies show that chronic gamblers tend to get a physiological high. Now, what does this mean? It's going to be like a sudden, intense release of brain chemicals similar to that of following a small dose of, stimulants like cocaine. So, chronic gamblers are going to get this physiological high from the activity of betting, particularly when they are gambling with their own money and risking a personal loss. So, undoubtedly, there exists a minority group of individuals who thrive off of risk-taking behavior significantly more than others do. So this suggests that there are not just psychological differences among people, but also physiological differences that may explain why certain individuals favor risky behaviors. Now, let's focus on the policy implications. So you could pause this area here of Gofferdson and Hershey's theory of low self-control and its main points. But now we're going to end this with the policy implications. Oh, sorry. So this, I meant to come to this slide earlier when I was discussing the theory of low self-control. So again, you could pause it here. But now we're going to transition to the policy implications. So when discussing the learning theories, some policy implications, so think of like differential associations, right? So some policy implications are going to focus on the influence of role models and significant others on individuals' attitudes and behaviors. Therefore, we need to emphasize positive or pro-social role models and avoid negative or antisocial role models. A good example of this is the condition that's given to individuals who are on probation or parole. And these individuals cannot associate with any known felons, right? Because of evidence backed by this theory. Now, there's also programs like the Head Start program, which attempt to provide youths with more positive or favorable definitions of conventional behavior. Various school districts are incorporating conflict resolution programs into their curriculum. And one researcher noted that it does appear that money invested in early prevention efforts with at-risk families will give greater payoffs than money invested in later prevention efforts with the same at-risk families. So what we mean by early is like preschool versus later is like adolescence. So this general rule is going to be difficult to apply because juvenile delinquents are going to attract more public attention than higher risk infants or toddlers. So the taxpayers are going to want to probably fund those programs because those are they gain more public attention. So it seems like it's more important. So in reference to the social control theories, policies are going to focus on enhancing more crime and delinquency control measures. So these types of efforts are often popular from the public perspective. In a similar light, programs have been developed that attempt to engage youths in more conventional type activities. So programs like the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H clubs, and Little League Baseball are going to be examples of these programs. So that is it. I did not mean to get to 4 different videos. Unfortunately, I X'd out of the 3rd video, so now you have a 4th video, and the 3rd and 4th video are going to be relatively short. But as always, if you have any questions about any of the presentations, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for watching.